Atlas.
Atlas.
Yes, I used to have some when I was a kid. I had to look geography on.
That's right. To see, you needed a view of what was going on.
Yeah, at that time, I'm gonna date myself, but I couldn't just Google it. I had to actually open a book and see what it was. So there was the Atlas, but I don't think you're thinking about that Atlas.
I think that's a different Atlas that I'm thinking about, and to be honest, I don't know much about it myself, which is why I'm excited to have our guest, Dr. Christina, on with us from MITRE. Christina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks, Marco. It's great to be on the show.
Yes, and this is part of our Chats on the Road to RSA conference, and you, Christina, are a panelist on one of the sessions that caught our attention, basically hardening AI and ML systems, you refer to as the next frontier of cybersecurity. So we're going to get into that panel and some things surrounding it, the work you're doing at MITRE with Atlas, which is why I was kind of teasing that out a little bit, where I think we think a lot about AI and ML from a privacy and usage perspective, but often miss the mark on security. We're going to dig into that today. Before we do, though, a little bit about you and your journey to and at MITRE. What are you up to?
Absolutely. So I've had the unique opportunity to work with and support sponsors all across the government over the past 10 years in everything from healthcare to national security. It's kind of a unique spot in being inside of MITRE. We're getting to leverage AI systems and AI-enabled systems and think about how to do that in an assured and appropriate way. I was actually fortunate enough to be part of one such sponsor conversation several years back that led to our partnering with Microsoft and about a dozen other organizations to launch the original version of Atlas almost 3 years ago now. And Atlas and AI security have been my primary technical and kind of leadership focus inside of MITRE ever since. Outside of Atlas and AI security, I've actually passionately been focused on building and growing our AI and Autonomy Innovation Center here at MITRE. We launched that also about 2.5 years ago, and I'm proud to say we've grown it into really an incredible force of about 200 researchers and leaders, just supporting just about every part of the government in AI and AI assurance. So yeah, it's coming from a really cool spot inside of MITRE. And for those of you that aren't familiar with MITRE, MITRE is a pretty unique place that it's a not-for-profit that works across most of those government sectors, supporting and advising our government sponsors and understanding their unique mission and needs and bringing our deep technical expertise and network of over 10,000 MITRE engineers, scientists, and really technically brilliant folks forward when there's a need to work on the most critical and impactful problems across the government. Because we're also a not-for-profit objective third party, we also get to work across industry and bring industry and government together like we do with Atlas to solve problems that we know will impact the entire community of both public and private sectors.
So I'm curious, 2-3 years ago, and I'm sure it wasn't, we flipped a switch. It was probably a few years leading up to the launch of some of those things that you actually initiated. Was that considered forward-looking at the time? I mean, it's in every ChatGPTs in every news segment, it seems, at this point. So we've reached a point where it's very well known and I don't know if understood, but certainly people have awareness of it. But 2-3 years ago, were you kind of leading edge, especially when people think about government, kind of lagging in terms of technology prowess in some instances?
Yeah, I think we were, especially because we were collaborating with industry. So much of the forefront of developments in AI are happening in the industry space right now, which is exactly why we knew when we were going to try and take advantage of this proactive window with our collaboration. We knew we had to have industry at the heart of it, which is exactly how all of this got started and how it has continued to explode. Because even like you're saying, the space has evolved so rapidly over the last 2.5 years since we started doing this. Just the number of startups or spin-offs from really massive companies has exploded over the last year and a half. We have so many partners under the Atlas collaboration right now that like didn't even have any focus or anything to do with AI security a year and a half ago and are now, focused on it full time. So yeah, absolutely. As the AI adoption has skyrocketed over the last year and a half, the AI security and assurance focus, both from a venture capital and industry investment perspective and number of brilliant people in the space thinking about how to realistically deal with these problems have both grown a lot.
So when you talk about frontier, I always think about it's a new delimitation of a territory, almost like a static point. But then you add cybersecurity on it, and it's dynamic. For me, it's not static anymore. And you guys are always at the forefront of these. Always, this frontier in a way is kind of like an ideal. It's always, as you get closer, it gets far and far away. But I think a lot of people nowadays, when they think about artificial intelligence and the way we use it, Chat GPT, for example, you don't immediately think about, it's a cybersecurity issue, but turns out it is. So tell us a little bit about that. Why is a big problem and something we need to talk about?
Yeah, it's quite interesting how many of these systems are getting deployed, especially by folks that don't quite realize the risk that come with deploying those systems. And I'm a big fan of the excitement and continued innovation around AI, right? So it's not like I think it necessarily needs to slow down. It's more that I want to make sure that people understand the risks that they're taking when they're deploying these systems and are at least making informed decisions when they're using them, which is actually part of why we're doing such a big shift in focus underneath the Atlas collaboration to focus on these new evolving threats, especially in this kind of prompt injection environment that is so parallel to so many of the different AI and machine learning attack pathways that we've seen kind of developing over the past few years. We actually just released a case study on a math GPT attack and have several more GPT or large language model focused case studies coming soon to the Atlas Matrix. And we've formed that little bit of a collaborative working group of industry partners that are both trying to use GPT or large language systems or secure these new attack pathways for themselves or their customers as new evolved tactics and techniques continue to come out of the adoption and implementation of these systems, as we're seeing how an adversary can use them. Actually, in that math GPT attack, it was a German master's student that was acting as a bad actor, right? But he didn't have malicious intent when he was attacking that math GPT system. And he was able to both bring down their server for a couple of days and get access to their GPT API key. And that's, there's a lot of things that he could have done if he had been a malicious actor in that particular circumstance. But we're actually treating that as almost like a red teaming exercise because he was actively trying to report it to Math GPT, in real time while he was, finding these vulnerabilities in their systems, right? So that's the other thing too. The space is evolving really rapidly, both because organizations are somewhat naively adopting and deploying these systems, and folks in real time are trying to figure out how they're vulnerable because we haven't had so many of these systems to play with in the past.
So before you and Sean get into more technical stuff, I'm curious to connect again with the news, and we've seen this big letter signed by the biggest AI investor, which is kind of ironic, about pausing AI. I mean, what's your thought on that? Would it be a wise idea, maybe, or is just another piece of marketing? Because I kind of have that feeling.
I definitely understand where people are coming from, and I think it's a really important thing to be thinking about. But the thing that always comes to mind in my mind when I think about, all right, what if we actually did decide to pause as a community? It would likely be the people that have the best intentions, right? We're actively trying to be positive about implementing these technologies, and malicious actors or, adversaries are not going to be taking advantage.
They're not going to pause.
No, they're not going to be respecting that kind of a pause, right? So really there's a risk that even with our best intentions to slow something down and try to be more deliberate about how we're using these systems, we're actually making ourselves more vulnerable. Because the adversaries would continue to develop, ways to attack and take advantage of our systems in that absence of, us trying to be on the leading edge of it.
So which of Marco and I would pause? That's the question. Which of the other would pursue? That's a trick question, of course. I want to. So you talked about the risk. You gave an example of the math GPT breach. I'll say it, a test that was a penetration test that succeeded. Let's say. How? I mean, these are computers, systems running somewhere with some software, probably an operating system, some software, and they have some applications and some algorithms and an interface, and you pointed out APIs that allow people to connect through other systems, but it's still a system for the most part. So are we at risk just because people are forgetting about cybersecurity, or are there other elements within the system that make it more ripe to attack, more rich in terms of exposure that they present, or what's kind of that landscape look like in terms of threat vector?
Yeah, some traditional cyber defenses work well for some of the vulnerabilities of AI-enabled systems, but you have to be particularly vigilant in applying them to the threat surface that is now introduced by incorporating AI into your system, which is why it's so important to understand the new threat surfaces that come from incorporating AI. I think there's a little bit of a chasm between, fully understanding adversarial machine learning, right, which is like really hardcore focused on the machine learning element of the system specifically. And then there's the cyber world, which is like worried about this totally different problem space. But the bit in between, which is really what we focused on even within the Atlas community, is what it looks like to introduce an AI-enabled or AI system inside of your system of systems or enterprise context, right? It's thinking about the combination of the two. This Math GPT attack example, that whole vulnerability happened because they connected that GPT system with a Python front end, right? So like they didn't realize how much vulnerability they were, exposing by doing that. Like it's not like GPT was performing incorrectly. So it wasn't a traditional adversarial machine learning attack, but it was because the system design and their risk decisions that they were making around all of this, they didn't realize the amount of vulnerability they were introducing by just connecting those two systems, which is not an uncommon setting even for many of the other attacks that we've seen and documented as case studies in Atlas. Actually, another example of like a facial recognition system. There was a $77 million loss by the Shanghai Tax Authority when just a couple of individuals, right, not even nation state actors, took advantage of the vulnerability of their facial recognition system over a 2.5-year period in order to get away with that $77 million loss. And it was all because they were using the facial recognition system in such a way that, the two actors were able to present just a like very modified, crude couple of video feeds, like very, very easy to implement video feeds through a cell phone that was super cheap, that they could just replace the front-facing camera with that modified video feed. And that traditional vulnerability of them being able to acquire personal information off the black market and these headshots that they use to create that privileged access, right? They were able to get that privileged access to the tax system and then issue invoices to fraudulently collect that $77 million over a 2.5-year period. Right. The facial recognition system was vulnerable to them presenting these really crude videos of faces that were just opening and closing their eyes and mouth and slightly moving their head around. But it was really because of that kind of system of systems context, both in that case and even in many others that we've seen in the Atlas framework. That is really why we're talking as much about this as we are, because it's not just adversarial machine learning anymore. You're not just trying to evade or erode a model. It's really much more about the easy things that a malicious actor can do to take advantage of the vulnerability of your full AI-enabled system once you're incorporating these things into your broader system of systems context.
Yeah, why work hard and long if you can just quickly and easy get in? But is there still a decent amount of risk in breaking the models? Because I'm thinking sports betting or financial systems and banking, stock trading, for example, within there. And if I'm familiar with application security, where you can throw certain code commands through through API calls and URL presentations and things like that to get an application to give you access to things you shouldn't have or do things that it shouldn't do. Is it the same? And is there a lot of risk there, or is that still too hard for the models in these AI ML systems?
We're still in a bit of a proactive window, so I don't think we've seen adversaries adapt as much as they will or have in the cyber context, right? There's a lot of easy things, low level of sophistication things that they can do to attack our systems. But that proactive window, I think as we continue to see more and more of these systems deployed and AI security continue to rise a little bit, right? Like we start to implement just the easy fixes within our systems, I think we're going to rapidly see our adversaries, ramp up their capabilities and skill sets to take advantage of these systems in a much more sophisticated way. But to your other point about these kind of consequential environments, right? We're not just talking about easy, harmless applications of AI anymore. As we deploy machine learning systems in any kind of consequential setting where anyone might have a motive to misuse or attack your system, you should absolutely be thinking about a healthy budget for red teaming. And it can be hard to put a number on, how much money red teaming, even from a cyber perspective, has saved the broader community over the years. But I think that's really where we have to think when we're thinking about AI security for the future here, because these systems are very vulnerable. And finding those vulnerabilities within our systems and then making informed risk decisions about what those vulnerabilities look like and whether or not it's worth trying to patch them, right? Be prepared for these threats and vulnerabilities. In those kind of consequential settings, I think we absolutely have to prioritize it.
Well, I think this is a great lead into maybe teasing a little bit about what you will be doing at RSA conference, maybe with your panel. I mean, it seems it's exactly the topic of it. So you want to give us some information about that so people can get excited and show up. But don't give it away too much, okay? Don't tell us the end of the movie. Don't do that.
I'm really excited to be on this panel with my friends at the FBI and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and then some of our industry friends from Calypso AI. We're really looking forward to talking to the community about the need to harden our AI-enabled systems. Like we've been talking a good bit about it today. It's important that the community understand that these systems are vulnerable, and it's you having a huge investment in AI is not the only type of organization that needs to be worried about these threats to our systems. I think that's a lot of it now. It's that AI is becoming a lot more accessible, easily adopted in so many ways in different domains. And I think that's the thing that much more of the community needs to realize and understand. The people that are investing millions and billions of dollars in developing these AI technologies are not the only ones that are vulnerable or that need to be prioritizing red teaming and security for these systems. If we're applying it in any way within our environments, you need to make an informed risk decision about what that vulnerability is for your broader system of systems context. And we're really looking forward to diving into it from both the government perspective and the industry perspective, and what we think we as a community can start to really do about that in our RSA discussion on Monday.
I love that you use the term risk in there, because I think we probably have to look at this differently from a risk perspective as well, right? So there's the traditional CIA model we can follow. Are these systems going to get taken down? Is the data going to get compromised and its integrity lost? Certainly there's the confidentiality, which touches on privacy of IP and things like that. But many times we talk about the use cases. So it's easy to get into the weeds of the system does this and it shouldn't, and we block it. But how does that fit into the big picture of the business? And that's changing the risk calculation there. So
right.
Will you be touching on that to maybe help guide folks to think differently as part of the panel discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, it is absolutely impacting a lot more organizations, even than just the high consequence government environment that immediately comes to mind, right? When you think about, healthcare, national security, transportation, right? Like any of the things inside of government that might start to implement AI, you can immediately understand why that's important to protect and secure. But from an industry standpoint, right? anybody that's applying AI in a consequential setting. We've been having conversations with, typical household brand name organizations, right? Like massive food developers or folks putting out pharmaceutical products or anything in the health space, right? Like it's just there's so many organizations that are looking to take advantage of the value of AI, and that value is at risk if you don't have very deliberate plans for security and assurance built in around all of those deployments of AI within your broader systems, which is, I think, what we're excited to continue to hammer home in our discussions with the community, and also build the collaboration around, because what we've continued to find is that no one is going to solve this problem in a silo. An individual organization is never going to have the full picture of the threat space or what could be realistically facing their systems. So bringing more of the community together, both industry and government, to better understand what that ground truth is on how an adversary could take advantage of these vulnerabilities in our system, and sharing the tools and capabilities across the organizational boundaries to be able to do something about it. Even from just the conversations we've been having with different government groups and even like large scale industry groups, helping them see that their systems are only as strong as their weakest system. And if they're partnering with other organizations or integrating different tools and capabilities, if they don't understand the vulnerabilities that come with that integration, then they can't make the informed risk decisions. And this is all comes back to zero trust kind of thing, right? Like you need to have a really good picture of what all of your systems in context with each other bring to the table from a risk standpoint, which is why it's so important to have these cross-organizational discussions.
Yeah, and for me, it always boils down to enabling innovation and growth, but then protecting it once you're doing that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Security built in.
Which is why I think we're also seeing the regulation space around this evolve
right.
In such an interesting way, because we've got a whole lot of cybersecurity type requirements laid out in the community already. But many of our, both government and industry conversations are about like, all right, let's try to help inform the potential regulation coming down the pipe, so it's as efficient and effective as possible. Because it's not like industry doesn't want this to be regulated. I think they also want to have safe and secure systems deployed, and government is being appropriately measured about thinking about how they want to implement regulation around all of this. So having that kind of joint set of conversations to be able to appropriately inform the risk or the regulation coming, I think is a lot of what our community is excited about, because we're in that proactive window to be able to do that. And if we wait too long or folks aren't involved in the conversation, then it's not likely to be as good for the community as it could be if we were focused on it now.
Yeah. And speaking of getting involved, being part of the conversation in the community there, I'm sure there's a connection back to Atlas as well. Describe that to us. Who is the community? What is Atlas? What does it do?
Yeah. So Atlas
is how can folks get involved if that's appropriate?
Yeah, absolutely. Atlas is more than just a public facing framework, right? It's directly built off of and meant to be used in concert with attacks. So we built it in that familiar format. So cybersecurity engineers that were trying to come up to speed on the AI side could easily adopt it and understand what we were trying to communicate there. But there's a much more than just that public facing webpage, right? There's a full community around it. We've got 70 or 80 organizations involved in our Slack space, where we're actively talking about these threats and vulnerabilities, the mitigation techniques, anything that we as a community can and should be doing to prepare for these threats and implement tools and capabilities within our own systems is an ongoing discussion in that Slack space. Beyond that, we're standing up some very protected mechanisms for incident sharing right now across the community. So bringing together our trusted partners that are mature enough in this space and have a good understanding of what their threats and vulnerabilities look like within their systems. They've stood up red teams, or they're working across even like other partners to help them understand the vulnerabilities within their systems. That's the kind of ground truth we need to inform where our community can understand what's going on and where we can be going. And that's why we're standing up these protected mechanisms, taking advantage of that MITRE as an objective third-party space where we can be that safe space to collect and anonymize, work directly with an organization to protect their IP and their sensitive information, but also get that ground truth that's going to inform a lot more of what the community should and can be worried about. as we're developing tools and techniques to counter these systems. So yeah, absolutely. Jump in. There's quite a few invite and contact links within the public facing webpage of Atlas there. There's a lot of tools and capabilities under the GitHub page. And we would love for anyone that's interested or even just coming up to speed on this topic to join into the conversations in the Slack space and be part of the community.
Yep. Love it. And we'll have to get those links from you for all the sites and logins that you're mentioning there. And it's about humans actually, these conversations, right? Not the machines themselves. So,
right.
So the first step to doing that is Monday, the 24th. Be sure to catch the session, Hardening AI ML Systems, the Next Frontier of Cybersecurity, 9:40 a.m. local time there in Moscone West, which is where Marco and I will be spending most of our time that week as well in Broadcast Alley. So definitely start that journey there with that session, meet Christina and the other panelists and the moderator and kick into the conversation. Then get part of Atlas and be part of what MITRE is doing. It's always good stuff. Been following the attack stuff. Excited to follow the Atlas stuff now.
Hey, there's no by mistake that Stronger Together is the theme of our state conference, right? As Christina was saying, all those things like the community, the policymaker, and sharing, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it's summed to at the end. Stronger Together. So I'm excited to see everybody up at RSA conference, and for those that cannot make it, just follow our coverage. And I know there are some sessions that will be definitely show on demand as well, so everybody can be part of it in a way or another. Follow us, subscribe. There'll be a lot of content coming up, and a lot has been already recorded. So this was actually, I think, the last chats on the road before our actual chat.
This is the one. This is the last chats from the office.
From the office, we call it on the. We'll pretend like we're driving.
That's right. That's right. But I'm super grateful for you taking the time, Christina, and thank you for all the work you do with MITRE. I know it's important and it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Marco. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to focus on this important topic that obviously we're really passionate about, but are excited to get more of the community shifting to focus on it as well. So really looking forward to seeing you in person next week as well.
Yes, absolutely.
See you there.
Bye-bye, everybody.